All right, the next one. Ugh, I can't believe I have to say this one. I'm sorry.
I made these for everybody listening or watching.
You're gonna make me do it? Okay, I'll do it. Here we go. A CSS framework called Alejandro.
And bring Lady Gaga to peer review that with us. So it's probably going to be fantastic.
Welcome back to another episode of Everyday Heroes, a show where we sit down with the backbone of the open web, the unsung heroes of tech. That's right, I'm talking about the open source maintainers, contributors, and organizers of the world. I'm your host, Hayden Ballio, and I'm here with my co-host, Wendy Hurst. What's on your mind today, Wendy?
On my mind today is weather. I really like good weather. It's been good. I live in Utah, and even though it's snowy in the mountains, I had to think about it for a second. It's been snowy in the mountains, which is good for us because that's where all our water comes from. But I'm extra happy because I don't like snow and I live in the valley and it's not very snowy today.
So you live in Salt Lake City, you don't like snow.
I know. It doesn't make sense to me either.
Is this just that concept of just like you've grown up around it your whole life that you're just kind of tired of it? Or have you ever liked snow? Have you ever liked snow, Wendy?
I think it's just a concept of I don't like to be cold. I'm a person who likes to be warm. I want it to be warm outside. I'm a beach person. I like being warm.
Okay. All right.
And snow is not warm.
Snow is not warm. That's true. Well,
snow is not warm.
Someone who grew up in Texas, I would love a little bit of snow every once in a while. But no, whenever we get some kind of precipitation when it's cold, it just becomes an ice apocalypse, and then the whole state shuts down because no one knows how to even function with ice on the road. I've never ever even seen chains on tires, Wendy. I've never even had to do anything like that. So yeah, it's a complete mess down here. But it is cold right now, which I love because as a bigger dude, I love the chilly weather. Like it's just nice in general. Okay.
Well, I can tell you that in Utah, even though it's cold here and icy here often, people don't know how to drive in it here either. It doesn't really matter.
Well, people don't know how to drive at all, right?
People,
that's just the matter of it.
No.
Okay. Enough of that. We got a pretty special podcast show today. Whatever we're calling this thing, right, Wendy?
The podcast. It's a podcast.
Yeah, podcast. Well, it's a show though, because like people are watching us on YouTube right now. Hey, people watching us on YouTube right now. But I'm excited and a little anxious to introduce this next guest for today's episode because he's a podcast host as well. So like I feel like we might get graded a little bit on our podcast today, but regardless of my imposter syndrome, the show must go on, right? So our guest today grew up in Havana, Unana. I bet you haven't heard that one before, Ali. I like that song. And now lives just a few miles north, as he would say, in Miami Beach. He's been doing front-end dev for over 2 decades, currently works as a principal front-end engineer at World Connect in Miami. He's a GDE, or a Google Developer Expert, for those who don't know the acronym. He's been part of the NG Champions program at NGConf. He's the co-organizer of the Angular Community Meetup, and he's the host of the Angularidades podcast, which, by the way, translates to Angularities in English. A huge member of the Angular community and all-around great guy. I'd like to welcome Alejandro Cuba Ruiz. Alejandro, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, man. I had to pull out all of it because I know you're our podcast host, and I was like, I got to show up for him. But no, truly, so before we go any further, we like to start this show a little differently, and that is with a game. So right now, I'm going to ship it over to Wendy, and we're going to play our first game of everyday heroes. Alejandro, are you ready?
Absolutely. Let's
Wendy,
do it.
take it away.
All right. We're going to play a game that we made up called Fork, Star, or Deprecate. In this game, I'm going to say anything from an open source tool or programming language to a ridiculous concept in tech that we made up. And you decide whether you want to fork it, improve it, star it, leave it alone, or deprecate it, retire it entirely. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Angular material.
Fork it to continue enhancing the features. TypeScript, absolutely star it. I'm the only one playing, or also Hayden?
You're playing. You're the only one playing. Yeah.
Okay, good.
It's for you.
It's a secret competition.
Because I would like to click as fast as I can.
Yeah, we need to get buzzers. We do
thinking.
need to get buzzers. Ship them to everybody.
We do, huh? But it'll just be one buzzer because it's just you. That's fun, though. Okay, here we go. Test-driven development, TDD.
All right. Because it's a great foundation for everything that we're supposed to do it beforehand. And I love the strategy. Is one that I don't use as often as I should, but I would like to watch it, how that evolves over time.
Okay, next one. Using RxJS in every Angular project.
I'm going to miss it so much, but unfortunately, let's deprecate it for a while.
Okay. Next one. Firebase.
Start it. Why not? It's a great framework.
Okay. Hot reloading.
You mean HRM? Like eventually reloading as fast as we can all the style sheets that we are, like experiencing during development
I believe
time.
that's what it means.
Absolutely start it.
Yes,
Especially in Angular 19, which has the hot reload module thing that is performing fantastic so far.
Okay. Next one. Angular CLI.
Start it.
Okay.
I don't know what I would do with all the modernization in Angular without the migration scripts, all the schematics for generating code automatically for us.
Okay, next one. Classic AngularJS or Angular 1.
Bye. Terminated. But please continue supporting everything that you guys do at Hero Dev. You are our everyday heroes with AngularJS. Gladly, I am not in anything that supports AngularJS anymore, but I kind of fondly remember the componentization efforts moving from 1.4 all the way to 1.5, and eventually refactoring the whole thing starting from scratch in the new kind of framework.
All right, the next one. I can't believe I have to say this one. I'm sorry.
I made these for everybody listening or watching.
Me do it? Okay, I'll do it.
I made these and they're super funny. And so this next one is a hypothetical funny one.
Okay. Here we go. A CSS framework called Alejandro.
Fork it and bring Lady Gaga to peer review that with us. So it's probably going to be fantastic to see her comments on that code base.
I am so sorry about that one. Okay.
And I'm very glad about that song because that's the reason why many people in English-speaking countries are able to pronounce my name correct. Since I was a kid, I was under the impression that Alejandro was a very popular name, understandable. That's actually the reason why my mom called me Alejandro, because supposedly everyone should be able to pronounce it right until I migrated to the United States. And I started, hitting Alejandro, and many other combinations that, they were literally transpiling my original name into so many variants over there. Wow. So thank you, Lady Gaga, again. And Hayden, probably that was you.
Yep.
On the question.
Okay. And the last one is a strict mode that bans using any type completely.
Start it. I am one of the culprits today that most of the code bases that I actually supervise and help to continue modernizing have so many any's and unknown types. But like, let's start it because that is a healthy practice and a fantastic convention to follow and adopt.
Nice. I love
Awesome.
that.
Done. You
I
did
love
it.
that. Yeah,
Yay.
he did. Great answer.
Thank
Oh
you.
my
That was
gosh.
so much
This
fun.
thing that I threw, this is this little plushie. It's like a thing we used to give out at some conferences. If you guys don't know, this logo actually has a name. His, her, their name is Cody Commit.
Cody Commit.
Oh, I like to throw things. I throw it at the end of every game. I didn't want to just throw it and not say anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, can I just say something? Can I say something, Alejandro? You deprecated RxJS so nice that I was like, if I ever have to get fired from another job, I want Alejandro to do it.
With a little bit of help of RxJS interop package, which allows us to smoothly transition over signals.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna miss we spent so much time learning RxJS and now it's kind of detached from the core of the Angular framework. Not fully right now, but you can write an application these days, an Angular 19 application, without having to rely in RxJS at all, especially with the developer preview features that are available so far.
Yeah, no, and that kind of brings me into kind of where I want to now start this conversation with you, Alejandro. Is I want to bring it back, and I want to bring it back 2 decades, and I want to ask you like what what got you into development, and then specifically what led you down this path of like adopting Angular as what I would assume is really your primary kind of like language that you program in and develop in. What was that journey like? Like, where did that start, man? Take us back to Havana and tell us what it was like.
Just imagine an offline realm. So no internet access, only the ability to play old video games from the 80s in diskettes, with 1.44 megabytes or maybe a little bit less, the larger ones. And I wanted to be part of that creating process since I was a kid. And I remember that I was drawing, there's different levels of those video games that I had the opportunity to play in a computer. And then my dad and my uncle introduced me to very basic, actually basic programming language and Visual Basic as well. And I found that so much interesting, having to, those tools to write conditionals, loops, engaging with variables. It was like a chess multiplied by 10. So I was able to start the process of creating my own world and my own video games, very, very basic ones. And I found it super rewarding because it's not like when you are doing science or you have any other type of role in society, you have to wait a significant amount of time in order to see the results. In software programming, you actually are able to get immediate feedback from the computer right away in your screen, and it's a great process. So I remember seeing the very first news in newspapers about the web, HTML, and using downloaded files in MHT, which was the compilation uh, format in Internet Explorer. I'm talking about in IE 5 and before IE Internet Explorer 6. And I found it like very inspiring to be able to create something that was going to be read by any consumer in any part of the planet. But I was completely offline. So I was creating my very first websites and web pages for myself and also for friends that, like share that in diskettes. And it was an entertaining process. I literally knew very basic stuff about HTML. As I was going through the markup language, I started digging a little bit more on that. Then I downloaded the HTML 4.01 specification, the single file that was like more than 1 megabyte of specification. And I remember that I read probably 60% of that, and I get familiar with what was the intention of the HTML language over time, CSS, then adopting fantastic jQuery library for my projects. And then I got intermittently connected to the internet, being able to download more resources, going through the university, studying software engineering, no web focus at all. Was mostly like C++ and algorithms, mathematics, the foundational layer of everything that allow me later to become a software engineer. And jQuery was phasing out, and were a lot of different frameworks like AngularJS, Meteor, Knockout, you name it. There were like dozen of frameworks to play with. And initially, I found a little bit challenging to get familiar with that combination, that conversions of the multiple layers that I was used to separate entirely the markup for declaring everything in the structure of the web document, the CSS for styling purposes, and the JavaScript for interactivity and event handling. And then those frameworks start combining all that in one single obtrusive mechanism using MVC or MVVM. And I had a lot of friction originally when I start playing with those large JavaScript frameworks, but I fall in love eventually with AngularJS, and it's been a fantastic journey so far, going through the whole evolution, Angular 2, Angular 4, then all the Ivy rendering engine, and currently the modern language, the modern framework that supports a lot of cool functionalities that we all are very proud to use in order to support our applications. That's the long story short.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That was awesome. I love how you I think that this is like prevalent with anybody that I meet that ends up getting to be very good at what they do, is that it starts almost as a child as they're just interested in something. They're just interested in doing something, and they're just going to figure out how to do it. It doesn't really matter. Like you didn't have any knowledge of Angular back then, or there wasn't even a framework like Angular back then, probably, right? At the time. So it's like you just were like, hey, I really want to build games, which, by the way, was the only thing that ever motivated me to learn any amount of programming. Was like, I want to build worlds too. Like I was just, I want to build a world. Like I want to build a game, because I remember, if I can, there was this book series, Alejandro, Wendy. There's this book series by this author named Christopher Paolini. He's a very young author when he wrote this book series called the Inheritance series, and the first book is called Aragon. It's one of my favorite books of all time. It's like the book that really got me into reading and reading fantasy. And I remember the the movie came out, and it was the only movie in my whole life that I was like really upset with that it didn't match the book more. Like it was a really bad movie in my opinion. Never got remade again. Like no second movie. I was so upset with it. But I remember there was a game on PC that you could get, and so I was like, well, this is literally my favorite book series, so I'm gonna get the game. And I remember playing the game and also being extremely disappointed with the game. And at that moment, I was just like, I wish I could just learn how to code so I can make my own game, and I could make this game so much better. And that's literally what prompted me to even do a little bit back in the day. So I can appreciate that. I think that's how it kind of always starts. It's like there's this interest in stuff, and then you kind of just you find your way. So what along the path, Alejandro, like what would you say are like what's like one of those moments where it really clicked that this is what you want to do for the rest of your life? Like maybe that was before university or whatever, but like when was that moment that you were like, man, not only do I just have fun with this, but like this is just what I want to do forever?
Would say when I start teaching computing, basic computing to kids, I start engaging with the idea of the cyberspace interaction. I mean, the humans interacting with cyberspace, no matter how old they were, how much experience they had. I had the opportunity to teach elementary school kids for a few years during I was studying software engineering as part of my social service in Cuba. And I found that so inspiring and probably connected me with the idea that I was going to be in the computer world for a long time in my life. Because when you learn something and then you have to teach that topic to other people, especially kids, you need to reframe it differently, and you start creating that relationship with that area of a specialization in a very different, I mean, it's intertwined in your brain in ways that probably don't happen if you just take that knowledge for yourself and not share it with others.
100. Couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Having to teach someone already takes a level of like having to become more of a master yourself, and then having to teach children. I was a thrower, shot putter, for a long time in my life, and I trained kids. And it was the truth of it is that also no kid learns the same way, right? They all learn differently. So you're constantly thinking of different ways to get through. And now that I'm a parent, it's like, and I have another one on the way now. It's like there is like, my first son is going to learn differently than my second son, and I'm just very, very interested in how that's going to go. Wendy, you have 3 children. Does any of them learn the same?
No. No.
You're like, no,
No.
absolutely not. Alejandro, do you have children?
Not yet.
Not yet. Not yet. I
But
like
I
that.
have a lot of friends that, I have a lot of nephews over there, and also biological um, nieces. So
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Yeah. So okay, I love that. So that sparking interest, like you were like, okay, I think this is gonna be my life for a long time. It was from that teaching moment. What what got you to, I mean, you have this very interesting, like coming from Cuba, what were there significant hurdles in making the jump into tech when you were in Cuba, or making the jump to come to the States to then like pursue a technology career here?
United States is a reference. I think that everywhere in the world in terms of advancing in the technological area. So I always had that in my mind. I mean, like a continue evolving in ways that I wasn't able to reach when I was over there in Cuba, especially the level of internet access, all the policies around the ability to use resources that I needed, hardware, software, connecting with teams that were creating great things and applications and larger communities. So one of the hurdles over there was definitely the access to information. Something that these days is kind of the hurdle is how do you are able to optimize yourself to consume so much information. But back then was the other way around. Rarely I was able to get the information that I needed in order to complete a project in a programming language that I wasn't familiar with. And I had to go overnight to get some access to internet in specific centers that had internet, because I wasn't able to get that, from home. And it was very, very challenging for years. Actually, for over a decade in my professional life. So when I came to the States, I started experiencing some other challenges, especially the language barrier, like having the opportunity to interact with other human beings, not via emails or through a chat, but using a different part of your brain that is dedicating a lot of neurons to the oral communication. Like speaking is an entirely different skill. When you're learning any spoken language, any natural language, and not referring to learning JavaScript or TypeScript, which is only reading and reading them. But if you're learning French or Japanese, you're probably going to have a hard time, connecting with sentences and producing that context that will be understandable by other people. So I started doing that when I was on my series, and it was kind of it is still challenging, especially because of the plasticity of the brain is not as it used to be when you are a kid and learning a second language. And I think that it was not the technical aspect, but the communication aspect is being the most significant challenge for me, and it's probably the same story for many people that migrated in a later state of their life.
Oh, yeah, I can completely understand that. I mean, you say, like, in this case it's an actual language barrier, but but at the higher level of that, it's just communication in general, which is just something that a lot of people suffer from just even if they're native native English speakers, Alejandro. Like, communication in general is something that people have to continually work on. So I love that. We do have, well, here at
Before I
Here It
got
Is,
into
we
tech,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Sorry, Wendy. No, you're good.
I
You're
was going
good.
to say that, but before I got into tech, I wanted to be a sign language interpreter, like as my job. This is a long time ago, a long time ago, early 2000s. I won't say the year; it will date me. But I wanted to be a sign language interpreter, and because I was younger, I guess, that's just my path. I took 2 years of it in high school, and then I took a couple of years of it in college. Like, I went through the training program, like that was going to be my job, and I picked it up so quickly. Later, I learned that really wasn't the life for me, so I moved on to other things. But fast forward to the last year, I decided I wanted to learn Spanish. I'm like, I pick up languages fast. I remember learning sign language. It's not a big deal. It's a big deal. I'm a lot older now. That was a long time ago. The early 2000s was a while ago. It's 2020, 25 now, and I just don't pick it up as quickly. I just don't. I can't. I'm trying. Also, it's
Yeah.
a spoken language rather than like you're not using your hands, so it's a little different. But I know what you're talking about. That kind of difference when you're a child versus when you're an adult, and trying to learn a language. It's very difficult.
Well,
Yeah, and you're right. And I recently. Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was just saying, even with learning American Sign Language, though, like, it's not even just like, it's also using your physical, like, hands and motion. It's like even another part of your brain. Yeah, they're like a kinesthetic part of that language, right? That's crazy.
It's true. I wish every language, like when you're speaking it, like you had sign language that goes with it. Sign language is actually its own language. Like if I were to sign and speak English at the same time, I'm literally speaking two languages at exactly the same time with two different parts of my brain. It's very difficult.
Wow.
Some argue it's not really possible to do well. I happen to agree with that theory. Maybe with practice I could do it, but it's hard.
Yeah, communication is not about only verbal. You also have to focus a lot on body language, on the inflection of your voice. It doesn't matter if you are an English speaker, conducting your abilities to audiences that speak the same language. You have to focus yourself in the volume, the way that you actually go through the inflection of the words, finding ways to engage with audiences, and that's something that is definitely important communicating in any language.
Completely agree.
So true. Well, I'm gonna stop us before we start signing things. Although I feel like this, I because I gotta do this. I gotta tell everybody about Hero Devs real quick. And maybe one of these ad reads in the future, I'm just gonna make Wendy do it and sign. All right, I'll be right back. I'm just gonna tell everybody real quick about who's putting on this podcast. Everyday Heroes is brought to you by Hero Devs. Hero Devs offers secure drop-in replacements for your end-of-life open source software through our never-ending support product line. You get to stay compliant with the likes of SOC 2 and HIPAA and FedRAMP and all the other acronyms and regulatory bodies you can think of, all while also getting real vulnerability remediation. You don't have to choose between a new feature and security, and with over 800 clients, you can be confident that your unsupported open source is in good hands. So if you need us, we're here. And if you don't, well, that probably means you've migrated to the newest version. So huzzah! Either way, visit herodevs.com to learn more. Now back to your regular scheduled programming. Peace! All right, Alejandro, before we go any further into fun stuff, though, we got to stop again for our second game of the podcast. Wendy, tell him what he won.
All right. Our next game is called Not My Job. We will ask you 3 questions that have nothing to do with your job as a software engineer or anything we've talked about today or ever, and everything to do with what you know about unusual competitions around the world.
Whoa, this is going to
Are
be
you ready? All right, here we go. Question number 1. Which country hosts the annual cheese rolling competition where participants chase a wheel of cheese down a steep hill? A, England, B, France, or C, Switzerland?
France?
France is your guess? No, it is England.
I think that I saw a picture of that long time ago. So yeah, European things,
Weird.
This
European
competition is held in Gloucester, England. It's on a place called Cooper's Hill. Participants race downhill, often tumbling, to catch a rolling wheel of double Gloucester cheese. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing any of these words incorrectly, especially the word cheese. The first person to cross the finish line wins the cheese. Question number 2, are you ready?
Yeah.
Question number 2. Which country hosts the Wife Carrying World Championship, where competitors carry their partners through an obstacle course? A, Finland, B, Australia, C, Canada?
I would say Australia because it's
Good guess,
so
but
far from
no,
here.
it is Finland.
Finland.
This event takes place annually in a town called, hold on, I had to look up the pronunciation. Sunkarjärvi, I think is how you pronounce it. It is in Finland. The goal is to carry a teammate, usually your spouse or your partner, through a course filled with water hazards and hurdles. The winner receives their partner's weight in beer.
I'm getting so close to lose the game. So
here we go. Question number 3. In the World Snail Racing Competition, what phrase is used to start the race? A, ready, set, slime. B, slow and steady wins the race. Or C, ready, steady, slow.
I will go with B, the second option.
Slow and steady wins the race. Incorrect. It's ready, steady, slow.
I knew it.
Ready, steady, slow.
It's a competition held. Yes. It's held in the UK once a year. A competition that pits snails against each other on a circular track with a finish line in the center. Owners cheer on their mollusks as they slowly make their way to victory.
I have a question for you. Where do you find it out? How are you able to collect so much insightful information around the world?
The internet.
Because it probably requires a large language model in order to generate, some of the questions oriented to
Sometimes, but it's internet, poking around.
Nice.
Last one. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Which country hosts the annual toe wrestling championship, where contestants lock their toes and try to pin their opponent's foot? A, England, B, New Zealand, or C, Ireland?
Ireland?
Incorrect. It is England. It's kind of like arm wrestling, but with your toes, I guess, in a place called Derbyshire, England. It's not Ireland. You tried to trick me. You tried to incite me. That's not it. I guess they compete barefoot because I guess using socks would be really hard. And they just try to knock their feet over. I don't know. I've never watched a video, but I kind of want to now. I think it would be fun. That's the end of the game. We did it.
How did
it go? Unfortunately, Alejandro didn't know any of the answers.
Yeah. I was going with the inverse,
opposite
option.
But also, it's a game called Not Your Job. So if you got the questions right, it's surprising.
Yeah, I mean,
good for you answering anyway.
That was a fun one. I was gonna say that I actually have not quite a bit of experience with these unusual competitions, but for instance, I have been invited when I did the Scottish Highland Games quite frequently. I was invited to Australia. They have they're in Alaska and Australia. In Australia, they throw some fish, and I don't remember what kind of fish it is, but in Alaska, they have a salmon throwing contest where literally you throw a huge 50-pound salmon for distance. And I was invited to that to throw it that one time. So I love a good unusual competition.
Did you go?
That's for sure. I wasn't able to make it. No.
Did you go to that competition? You didn't make it.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Now, one day I'll make my way up to Alaska and throw a salmon for distance. It's on the bucket list.
Do you get to keep the salmon when you're done?
Oh, I don't know, but maybe.
I learned so many insightful things about worldwide competition today.
Yeah,
it's probably going to. I'm gonna lose all that tomorrow, but it's
yeah. Well,
it's so much fun.
It's useless information.
Ready, steady, slow, baby. Right. Okay. So getting back into the groove here, though, and getting back to you, Alejandro, I think I would be remiss if we went all the way through this podcast without asking you, Angular 19 kind of rolled out not too long ago, right? And I mean, I personally think the Angular team has I don't like to use the word aggressive, but they have a very fast release cadence, right? Every 6 months. So what are your thoughts, as Angular 19 was released? I mean, truly, when I joined Hero Devs, Angular had its renaissance, right? I believe that was that 18 where they claimed renaissance.
Angular 17.
17 was renaissance. That's right. So and it was
a
really
year
cool
ago, a little bit more than a year ago.
Yeah, it was really cool to see. It really was. And the new site was awesome to see. And now that we're a year past that kind of change, how do you feel about Angular 19 and all the new things coming out and the changes?
I'm probably biased, but I think the direction that the framework core team is taking is super inspiring, because we can see from the other side, from the community side, stabilization of many powerful features that before are getting released as stable versions are being used in hundreds of applications internally in Google. And that makes the collection of new functionalities that now is being offered in Angular 19 very solid collection of features that we can incorporate in our existing application. You name it, like progressive hydration, all the different changes that are happening in the reactivity model using Angular signals almost all around, and the changes in the syntaxes of the HTML templates, and many other powerful additions that have been released recently in November 19.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what was did you have like a horse in the race? Were you really happy that, what are you, I guess, again, let me reframe the question. What are you most bullish about when it comes to Angular 19, and what do you kind of, do you have any insights on what you'd be looking for in 20, even though, it feels like, oh, we just 19 literally didn't come out that long ago, and I'm already talking about 20, but 20 is going to be right around the corner. It's going to happen. It's going to happen quick. So what are you most bullish about 19 feature, or anything wise? And then what would you love to see in 20?
Yeah, it's not a secret, and I'm very bullish about a signal form. I mean, like a signal-based form approach that is finally going to allow developers to get away from that analysis paralysis on reactive forms versus template-driven forms that has been there for a while, since the very early versions of Angular. And now with forms connecting with the signal graph in the framework is going to highly likely enhance the developer experience significantly. I would say that's my wish for Angular 20, and also more, graduating more features that are currently in experimental and developer preview mode, like the resource API, also signal driven, and possibly other areas in the framework on the hydration part, and also change detection uh, related, that are probably going to be stable in Angular 19 going on, in Angular 20 going on from May.
Nice. What if you were to kind of go back in time, Alejandro, and tell yourself 10 or 20 years ago, what's some advice that you would give yourself as you really started in earnest in your development journey, your programming journey?
Don't be afraid of math, of the foundational principles of logic, calculus, because regardless if you use it heavily or not in your day-to-day programming practice, it evolves your ability to face problems significantly. So if that Alejandro early 2000s dedicated a little bit more time to foundational problems, I will think that I will go in a direction, in a faster approach to many of the challenges that I faced during the learning process of C++ and many other frameworks beyond. And that will be probably an advice number one. And also learning English earlier. That not only reading subtitles, but also exposing a little bit more to the oral communication, for sure.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And that's an advice that will probably be helpful to many other people that are in their 20s right now. Like continue finding knowledge, not in the JavaScript frameworks, but go a little bit lower in the foundational layers. Go to the algorithms, go to the logic, even to the mathematical and physical principles that support everything that we see in cyberspace, and then go back to your specific specialization, because it doesn't matter how much you specialize in Angular, any other framework, or maybe cybersecurity or generative models. right now is gonna change drastically in 5 or 10 years from now. It's highly likely whatever you are specializing and dedicating hours to right now is going to evolve and change to a completely different thing, but supported by the foundational science.
I like that. Yeah.
I've never heard someone talk about math retroactively like that before. My older children are teenagers, and whenever I bring up math, they're good at math, they like math, but they don't want to talk about it. So it's interesting that you look back, you're like, I wish I just thought about math more. That's great.
And there are many flavors. I mean, trigonometry, geometry, space geometry. I mean, there are very in different and attractive ways to approach to math. I like to teach, used to teach my students back in Cuba that every single change in the pixels that forms the grid on your visual viewport. I mean, in the displays that you have in front of you. It doesn't matter if you are watching a movie or playing a video game, that has to be computed, rasterized. The layout have to follow some basic programming and mathematical principles, and connects directly to the trigonometric principles that you probably studied when you were younger, and they have to study when they are in the formational years.
That reminds me of I think it was Jim Gaffigan, but it was some comedian that did a bit about how he was like talking about maybe his wife or somebody that was getting mad that the internet wasn't working fast, or like a phone call text message wasn't happening fast enough. And he's like, do we ever even stop to think, people are gonna have to fact check me, I don't know if it's Jim Gaffigan, but he's like, you ever stop to think though that this thing has to go from your phone to a satellite and then back down, and you're mad that it's taking like more than a couple seconds to happen? It's like that kind of reminded me of it. It's like, yeah, you ever stop to sit and wonder about all the evolution of technology that's just in front of me right now? I got lights and two monitors and a laptop, and it's like, it wasn't that many decades ago where the first computer like couldn't fit inside of the room that I'm in right now. You know what I mean? That's kind of wild to think about. You're right.
And still you can find many people like me very focused and getting attracted to more performance optimization in order to increase the ability for the users to have predictable interactions, reducing significantly the page load, the interactivity of the applications. They don't know anything about what we are creating behind the curtains. They only know that they have to click a button and get an immediate response in any kind of device. So if something goes wrong, they probably know about us or remember about the engineers or the designer behind the product. But our intention is to go as transparent as possible for the user journey and interaction.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you don't always get the 5-star reviews, but you always get the 1-star reviews if you have a bad experience, right?
Yeah. Totally.
And
on calls in the middle of the evening. And that's one of the reasons why I pick front-end engineering instead of databases or, DevOps, because it's kind of rare that you get a call in the middle of the night because something went wrong with a style sheet, or the HTML broken, or something in Angular that was causing issues. Usually that is not, that doesn't happen, and TDD is probably one of the tools that allows to anticipate how the whole script that you have in mind for that application is going to play out eventually during the the production of the code base that is going to generate the final product, and then the automated testing, all the different testing layers that prevent something to happen in the front end. So the front end is magical. for everyone if it's played well.
Yeah. I have one last like topic I wanna ask you about before we wrap up with kind of our final scenes here. And it's really about like your journey into podcasting and the Angularidades like podcast, and why, like, I'd love to know, why you started it, and why you wanted, what was that movement for you in your life where you're like, oh, I want to do this, and then what have you gotten out of it so far? And yeah, I'm interested in knowing.
Yeah, I love that question. So I found a lot of inspiration with my college in the Angular community meetups, and also a lot of hero dev people from Latin America. There is so much talent in the Spanish-speaking countries, and also here in the United States, and people that have Spanish as the first or maybe second language that have a story to tell, also a lot of technical insights to share with the world. And I created that podcast for sparkling, sparking opportunities of conversations related to Angular and things that could be relevant to the Angular developers. It doesn't matter where in the world, where they are in the world, and also what language do they speak. Gladly, we have the automatic generated captions in YouTube. So we're producing that content in Spanish, and the generative models allow me to use the transcript generated by Riverside and create the corresponding key takeaways and the summary in English. So a lot of good conversations are happening, not only in Spanish, but maybe in other languages that I felt it was valuable for the overall community, to the larger Angular community, to learn a little bit more of what we are doing in Latin America and Spain.
I love that. It's like you essentially created a platform where like Latin American and Spanish individuals could come on and share their insights. Uh, and I love that. That's really cool. I think
Thank you.
um,
And there are so many other platforms. And I mean, in case that anyone hearing is knowledgeable about or can understand Spanish, you have many other ways to engage with the community in Spanish, like the Angular community meetup in Spanish every second or every first Tuesday of the month. I mean, it's on the website. I forgot right now what is the exact cadence, what day of the week, but in meetup.com you can find it. And also Dominicode and Nico Bytes is also generating a very good content in YouTube in Spanish. MeDoDev as well. There are a lot of talented people over there, like producing content in my native language that is very insightful for the community.
well, and can I just say I think it's crucial because like this is an example from a different framework, but Vue.js, when it originally like launched, and Evan, you created Vue.js. I think one of the things that really made it incredibly popular very fast was because he had incredible documentation in Mandarin. Like, and because of that, it got adopted quickly by the eastern part of the world, right? Or in Asia in general. And so I think that was it's a hugely beneficial. And so being able to leverage things like your podcast and the community meetups and things like that that allow people to discover things in their native language, while also being able to harness the insights and be able to put those into English for people who don't speak Spanish or don't speak another language is really cool. So, bravo for the podcast, though. I've watched a lot of the podcast episodes that the Hero Devs have been on. That's for sure. And yeah, just it feels like it's been a great success. So, good job.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Well, Alejandro, we have one last game, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. Wendy is our game master, so she's going to take you through the very last game.
Let's
That's
go.
right.
It's
Our last
Friday,
game
so
of the
let's
show.
celebrate it.
Yeah.
Our last game of the show is called Lightning Fill in the Blank. In this game, you have 60 seconds to answer as many questions as you can. The more questions you answer, the more bragging rights you get to take home.
Yes. And the more
Are you
swag
ready?
from Hero Dev in the
Oh
upcoming
God!
NGConf, right?
Don't set a standard.
That's right. All right, let me set my timer here for 60 seconds. Here we go. Angular uses a component-based architecture where each component is defined by a class, a template, and a blank file.
Class, a template.
A class, a template, and a blank file.
You got me. And a spec file?
Good guess,
Broadly?
but no. Style. To serve an Angular application locally during development, use the command ng blank.
Serve.
Yes. Angular's built-in service for handling HTTP requests is called the blank client.
HTTP client.
Yes, to enable
But I
navigation
encourage everyone
between
to use
views.
resource API based in signals. But go ahead. I'm losing the game.
To enable navigation between views, Angular relies on a feature called blank routing.
The router, the native router.
Good guess. No, it's called dynamic.
Dynamic.
I'll do a couple more though because it's our game and we can do whatever we want. Are we ready? Okay.
Yeah, bring me 2 more questions.
No rules, no rules. Okay, here we go. Reactive programming in Angular is heavily reliant on blank, which is a library for handling streams.
React.js.
Yes.
But
I don't know
probably
how to say
not
this
anymore.
one. Not
Angular
anymore.
20. I mean, it's backward compatible. Definitely, it's not going anywhere, but it's optional.
It is optional. Okay. Next one. Angular applications typically have a root component that serves as the starting point of the app. This is often called blank component.
App component.
Correct. Last question. Angular's ability to optimize templates by precompiling them is referred to as blank compilation.
Ahead of time compilation, aka AOT.
That's right.
Nice.
End of the game.
Yeah, nice.
That's time, I mean.
Yeah, that's time. Yeah. Woo, long 60 seconds. Don't look at the clock, everybody, but whatever. Well, I actually forgot we were doing lightning fill in the blank today. So I wanted to ask you, since it looks like you you might read a little bit, Alejandro. I want to know, do you have a book, a certain book? If you had one book maybe on the shelf behind you that you would recommend to anybody, or just one book in your life that you're like, people should read this book?
I would go with the traditional Pragmatic Programmer, second edition, which have a foundational knowledge on how to become a good software programmer. It's super easy to read, large letters, like it's not overwhelming if you are not used to it. And if you would like to find very, very valuable insight in each page of this 300 pages book, Staff Engineer's Path by Tanya Relly. So this is a jewel. I had the recommendation to read this book from my college, Alfredo Perez, from the Angular Community Meetup. And I mean, I think that I read this book in less than 2 months. It's so insightful. It doesn't matter what point in your career you are, but if you would like to stay in the individual contributor path and not jumping directly to managerial roles, this book, The Staff Engineer's Path, is probably one of the most insightful reads that you can find. It's going to age well, so it doesn't matter. I mean, it's very recent. I think it's 2 years old, something like that, but it's definitely going to age well.
Nice. Thanks. We'll try to put those.
I have a lot of books about science fiction and national parks.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Those look
Financial
interesting
advisory.
too.
Those are interesting, no doubt. we'll put the I'll try to link those in the show notes for this podcast though, so anybody who wants to explore them can. My last question for you, Alejandro, is a question that I asked everybody so far, and it is, if you could just send a one-word comment, and you could push that comment to every maintainer and contributor to open source, and it would have had one word, what would that word be?
Visual consistency. I mean, it's 2 words.
It's 2 words. Okay,
But
well,
you
We'll
get it.
allow it. We'll
Or
allow it.
just consistency, because it's more predictable. It doesn't matter if you are using a visual language or a consistent code base or coding practice. If you write something that is predictable, and if you generate predictable components exposed to the users, you're probably going to be in a good standing. And people that work with your products, maybe working with you, are probably going to also directly benefit from that.
I love that. Consistency. That's huge.
Mhm.
And Alejandro, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Truly, it's been a really,
Thank
really
you for
great
having
episode.
me.
Yeah. Wendy, thank you for being my ride or die. And
I got you.
I know, and thank you for watching this far, and thank you for listening this long, and we appreciate each and every one of you. Phil, please, share this just with another developer or person in your tech community that you think might get some insight from it, and continue to be the tech hero. The hero of your tech world. There we go. I said it right. And I can't wait to see you on the next episode. Thanks again, Alejandro, and we'll see you around.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.